Stan RadioStyle. Hope everybody out there is having themselves a great day. Going to be doing a couple shows here over the next, a couple days or whatever, that I think are rules that are set in this law of attraction game, like more black and white rules, that I don't think are as black and white. And so I'm not necessarily trying to cause any friction, not trying to cause any concern that we're doing something wrong. What I am frequently fond of trying to do is arming you with more additional information, more understanding into how these processes work, and thusly from that, you can make decisions based off of this. So like one example, and one thing that I've thought a lot about, and I've been thinking about it over the past couple days. I've used it, I've not used it, so I'm all over the place on this one, and we're gonna kind of I'm gonna talk about it. We're just kind of gonna see where we end up with it, and hopefully it makes some sense. Obviously from the title, has something to do with setting time limits, right? And a lot of us, there's plenty of documentation out there to suggest that you should put time frames on things. Examples, I should be with my person by, this time next month, or I should have my first date with them by a year from now, or I should have my new job within 2 weeks, or whatever the case is, right? And a lot of us put these arbitrary time frames on there. Sometimes we put time frames on there that we want to see, right? Sometimes we put time frames that are maybe too far off into the future. Maybe we're not being aggressive enough. And sometimes we don't put time frames at all. Maybe we should, maybe we shouldn't. I don't know. So let's talk about this a little bit. One thing, when it comes to time frames, I think being realistic is something to consider, right? Something that needs to be a part of that. So, for example, maybe your specific person is in another country and you're trying to arrange them coming back. There's nothing on the books as of yet. There's no talk. There's no new job for them to come here, or the school thing is still happening. They've got 6 more months of school. But for some reason, we're trying to put a time frame of 1 month. They're going to be here in 1 month. Well, that's really not possible. That's not realistic. I know we want it, and I know we want to make that so by putting some sort of arbitrary belief there, but when the reality of it is that they've got 6 months more of school before they could leave and come here, well, making it less than that is actually setting you up to, at some point, have to face the fact that it's not going to occur based off the time frame you set, which is one of the concerns, and we'll get into that. So make it realistic. Set it for something that works. If they're done with school in 6 months, then maybe maybe within 7 months I will see them. I will be in front of them. Maybe they'll come here. Maybe I'll go there. Whatever the case is, but I'll be open and I can try to start to put together a time frame that actually works. So keeping that in mind, I think, is a very wise decision when we're thinking about, should I put a time frame? Shouldn't I put a time frame? So that's one thing to keep in mind. You don't want to do anything crazy like, tomorrow. I want to manifest this by tomorrow. Give yourself a chance, because again, it might work. I'm not going to say it's not, and it depends what you're trying to manifest. But where the concern of mind comes in, and this has happened to me a number of times. I've put time frames on things and said it needs to happen by next week. It needs to happen in 2 weeks. And if it doesn't happen in 2 weeks, and that's it, then I'm going to take that as a sign from the universe that we're not supposed to be together. And typically when I've done this, that exact thing, when I basically say, line in the sand, if it doesn't happen by this date, then that's it. And what happens frequently, at least with me, and I think it does with a lot of people, is you'll reach that line in the sand. And then what? Universe will have fun with you sometimes, not in a mean kind of way, not in even a joking kind of way. It's the fact that I think when we create that line in the sand and said it must happen by this, I think we're manifesting that. I really do. I think we're manifesting that line in the sand. We're manifesting the place where we're going to end up crossing that line and then looking at what it is that we're trying to manifest through different eyes. And what a lot of the times have happened with me is I reach that line in the sand. I reach that place where it didn't happen by the time frame I set. And then I'm sitting there looking at it going, well, I still want to be with this person, or I still want this thing to happen. So I guess I'm going to keep going for it anyway. Like the whole point of drawing the line in the sand is now null and void. It's a moot point at this crossroad, at this juncture. right? I've basically said this has to happen or I'm done. And then it doesn't happen. And I'm like, okay, I didn't really mean done like that. Like I just meant done for the day. I'll think about it again tomorrow. So one of the problems I find when we set limitations on the time, and again, I've read things too that say it's a good idea. I don't believe things are black and white. So again, I think setting timeframes can be advantageous, and it can also be extremely problematic for our manifestations. So again, it comes down to that, what happens if it doesn't happen? I frequently talk about facing our fears, facing the worst case scenario. What happens if my time frame doesn't happen? That's a question you should ask yourself right off the bat. And I know a lot of us are going to say, well, then I'm done. And what that is typically is it's kind of that pouty, childish part of ourselves that wants to force this to happen, that wants to essentially throw a little tantrum and make universe give it to us so we'll behave, so we'll feel okay, so we'll be appeased and we'll be happy. And what will happen most of the time when we do that? The universe isn't going to give it to us. Why? Because we're creating this weird separation from it. We're creating this odd scenario where this has to happen or else. And the universe is like, well, you're already separating yourself from the thing, and you're now saying that this has to happen so you can show yourself in relation to what you want, right? So I want this thing to happen. I want to be with my SP next week, right? And then by creating this line in the sand the way we do arbitrarily, we actually manifest this scenario where, all right, so you're not going to get your person by next week, and then we're going to have a discussion next week and let you figure out, what do you want to do to move forward? Do you want to give it one more week? Do you want to say that's it and throw your hands up and walk away, and then 2 days later, you start feeling all weird. You get that sick feeling in your stomach. Or some of us even do crazier things, and we'll text them and we'll be like, I don't ever want to talk to you again, and send it, because we're trying to, set the tone, set the pace. Like the universe said, no, it's not happening. So that's it. It's over. And then we walk away, and then about 4 seconds later, we're like, what'd I do? Right? So again, the line in the sand thing doesn't work. Have I seen it work in cases? Yeah, I'd like to see this sign within the next 48 hours. I'd like to maybe get some indication in the next 24 hours that I'm heading in the right direction. Keeping things relative, looking for anything that kind of fits, let the universe kind of bring it to you. But certainly setting a timeline, like I don't want to keep looking for signs, for 5, 6, 7, 8 days, and then a month later something happens, and I'm like, was this from like a month ago, or what's it? No, there's a place for setting time limits. I think when we set it on specific things, and again, I've read lots of stuff that suggests you should do this, that you should set timelines on all the things you want, that I'm going to get my specific person by next month. Again, I'm fine if we're going to do that, but what I think is important is that we kind of look at it from this other side, because like I've said, I've seen this backfire on me in a number of cases. And it's not that I was doing it wrong. I think there's more to the way things manifest than I think some of the literature would suggest. I think it kind of is more akin to what I've talked about frequently with, you prepare this delicious, wonderful meal, right? I made lasagna last night. It's a great example, right? I put a lot of time and effort getting all the ingredients ready, the meat sauce, and getting the noodles prepared, and getting everything cut up that I was going to do. And you get all the ingredients out, the ricotta and all the herbs and seasonings and all the different stuff, the Parmesan, all the different delicious components that go into it. And then you start building it, right? And you start layering it out. You start putting all this time and effort, and you get this amazingly heavy dish, by the way, of just delicious yumminess inside of one of my little dishes, right? And I throw the foil on it and drop it in the oven. And I knew I needed 40 minutes to cook it, but for a lot of us, we'll check it every 5 minutes, right? We'll check it. Is it ready yet? No, it's not ready. Is it ready yet? No, it's not ready. It's coming. I know it's coming. I know my manifestation's coming. And yeah, I guess from the standpoint of setting the timer, yes, I have a good idea it's going to take this long, and that's fine. And I'm gonna wait for that time. But where a lot of us kind of come into play on this, or where a lot of us tend to make the mistake, is we may set a time that's not really far enough, right? Like if I didn't put the lasagna in for 40 minutes, it wasn't going to cook. I could put it in for 20, but it would not have cooked all the way. It wouldn't be ready. So how do I know? Well, I did some research. I found some recipes that suggested how long I should cook it at what temperature. And so I set it a little low of that, like not the temperature, but the time. Like I think 45 minutes is what they said. So I'm like, I'll check it at 40. And it was already smelling, it was already great. And 40 minutes comes, I open it up, and my delicious dish is ready. But if in the case of not being sure or setting it at too low a time, every time I open that door to look at it, look under the foil, close the door back up, I just let all that heat out. Now it's going to take an additional few minutes to even heat back up to where it was so I can continue to do what it was doing. I keep retarding the movement of the cooking. I keep slowing that process down. I keep causing issues with the cooking process because I keep opening it up, because I keep questioning it, because I keep doubting it, because I keep creating artificial lines in the sand that maybe aren't far enough out. What is far enough out? Well, if you're in one of those situations where you're not really sure what's a fair amount of time, then maybe a time frame's not the best thing. Maybe it's not. Maybe you can hit time frames up for aspects like, hey, show me interest. Maybe they're texting me back within a week. Maybe they're doing, right? But to say we're together, to say that we're arbitrarily, like something has to happen by this point, I think can sometimes cause us frustration. It causes us doubt cycles, like badly, because what happens when we start getting closer to that line in the sand and we start questioning it? We're just like, oh, it doesn't look like it's going to happen, right? And we start worrying about it. It creates all this extra drama because in some books we've read, it says you should do this. You can do whatever you'd like, but what I've found in my practices, what I've found with others, that there are times where it seems the line in the sand seems to help. There are times where it definitely works, no matter what you're trying to do. And maybe it was going to happen anyway. Maybe it was your line in the sand, but I've also seen it cause a lot of problems, questions, confusion, and frustration. So it's something I recommend you use carefully if you're going to do it. I recommend using it to kind of inch your way towards things, maybe getting aspects of it, asking for parts of it, asking for some sort of indication that maybe that direction's coming. Like those kinds of things I think are good. But when we're talking a big manifestation, certainly manifesting another person into our lives, because they've got a life, we've got a life, we're trying to bridge those things, right? That's a little more complex. And then we're talking about even like maybe a job, when there's a couple extra things that can come into play. When we start drawing lines in the sand, sometimes it can definitely cause us to miss our mark. So again, are we checking the oven every 5 minutes, or are we cool waiting the 40 minutes, or whatever that is, whatever the amount of time necessary is, are we willing to wait for that? Are we willing to let this happen? You put all the work forward, you create all the imaginal work, the manifestation's in process. It is happening. It's in the oven with the door closed and cooking. Now, maybe some of us don't know exactly when that buzzer's going to go off, but it will go off. It will continue to cook. And if we keep messing with it, it won't. I think that's where a lot of this really comes into play. Just trying to throw something out there that I hope helps, I should say. And I think, again, time limits have a place, but I think sometimes we set them arbitrarily. We set them too short. We set them in ways that don't really represent the true reality of what we're trying to accomplish. And then it actually has a whole lot of side effects that can come along with it. So what I recommend is having your manifestation, knowing your manifestation's coming, seeing it in your mind's eye, doing the imaginal work, acting as if, living in the end, remembering when. All of these techniques are great, and continue to do them. And your manifestation will occur when it's supposed to, and not a second before, and not a second after. It will happen exactly at the right time. It always does. It always does. So let it happen in its time. Let it happen beautifully and perfectly. Trying to fight that and trying to force the universe to do things will only frustrate ourselves. And there is no way to force the universe to do what we want. We are all a part of this game, and we're all dancing and flowing and ebbing together at our own pace, in our own time, learning our own lessons. It's all of these things are growing and developing, and we're working together with other people to share our lives, to co-create, as Esther Hicks frequently calls it. I hope this helps. Again, I know this is kind of slightly taboo. This will probably be one of the ones I get the most thumbs down on, but whatever. Like, to me, it's one of the things that I've seen cause more issues with more people than not having time limits at all. I just, again, I see places where they're used beautifully, and I see a lot of places where I think they've caused problems for people and caused just a lot of concern and frustration. I've done the same thing. I've missed marks all over the place, but I have manifested stuff 6 ways from Sunday. One of the things that I've found is not overly helpful is putting time limits on things. I've just found it's not as helpful. Again, I've had it work. I've had situations where I've been able to get indications, some signs, a little bit of feedback, the universe maybe kind of giving me a little glimmer of something within a reasonable amount of time, and it's like, all right, cool. I'm heading in the right direction, right? It still may be miles down the road, but I'm heading down the right road. Thank you, universe. I'll keep going. I'll keep moving. I have no idea when it's going to show up, but I know it will show up at the exact right time. I know that beeper is going to go off on the oven, the dee, right? And I know my food is ready. It's all cooking. It's on its way. Dinner is coming. I just need the patience and the love and the focus on where I'm going, and I will get there. I will get there. Let yourself get there. Don't try to make it more difficult than it needs to be, right? The simpler we can do this, it's happening for sure. It's in process. I'm heading down the right road. It'll be there before I know it. All of these things are great things to tell ourselves. It needs to happen by tomorrow. Okay, then what happens when tomorrow comes? That's all I'm saying. What happens when tomorrow comes and it maybe isn't here yet? Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. It's not a belief thing. It's a dealing with the fact that it might not happen the way you're saying. It's still happening. I'm not doubting that in any way, shape, or form. It just maybe wasn't ready to happen by tomorrow. Maybe that was an unfair time frame. Maybe you shouldn't have been putting time frames. Maybe, I don't know. But I think oftentimes when we let things happen in their own process and know that it's coming and just being patient, not trying to separate it from ourselves, not trying to make it more important than it is, not trying to put this strange rules onto things sometimes, and we'll find more success in what we're trying to manifest when we do that. We'll see. Hopefully it helps. Dan RadioStyle. Setting time limits can be good, can be bad. Most of the time I probably recommend not so much. Let's just keep focusing on what it is. Let's let it happen. And let's try to remove the time component from it as much as we possibly can. Let's keep looking where we're going. Let's not look where we're at, right? Let's not look down at our feet, as I've said frequently. Let's keep walking forward, keep looking what's out in front of you, and enjoy the journey, because the more you can enjoy the journey, the more this whole manifestation process tends to be a lot more exciting, because then stuff happens all the time and you're noticing these cool little things, and it keeps kind of working towards your goal, keeps heading that way. So time limits, I don't think they're so great. I think sometimes just kind of keeping ourselves moving is the way to go. It's Dan RadioStyle. If you guys enjoy, please thumbs up, share, like, and all that good stuff. And also, if you haven't subscribed, please do so. You can click the little picture of my face, subscribe, put the little bell icon. That way, every time I put out anything, you'll be notified. You'll see a little pop-up from YouTube. It says, hey, Dan RadioStyle just put out a new video. What do you know? Check it out. So hopefully that works. And we'll do more great shows. Got a lot of good stuff that people have been asking. So again, if you've got show topics that you'd like to hit up, throw them in the comments. I definitely read them. I try to comment to as many people as I can, but there's just a lot of comments. So I do the best I can with everything, and emails are kind of the same way. I respond when I can. I try to read everybody's emails, but it's just getting to the point where the numbers are becoming beyond what one person can manage, especially when I've got a job and other things that I try to manage. And so, that throws some challenges. But anyways, we'll continue doing more wonderful shows for you right here on Dan RadioStyle. Thank you.